Action!
Someone attracted to the same sex. Isn't that a gay? Okay, gay. Homosexual? For homosexuals. Okay.
Why don't you fight for male and heterosexuals as well?